My name is Samantha Mitchell, and at 29 years old, I found myself standing outside the house I once called home. 9 years had passed since my family disowned me, slamming the door on my pregnant, 20-year-old self. Now, as a successful pediatric oncologist, I stood frozen, staring at the place where my world had shattered. Inside, they celebrated my father's 60th birthday, unaware I had returned. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorbell. Would I finally confront my past or walk away? Before I continue my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our community of survivors and thrivers. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Growing up in suburban Boston, the Mitchell family appeared picture-perfect from the outside. Our sprawling colonial home with its manicured lawn and luxury cars in the driveway projected an image of success and harmony. But inside those walls, and he expected the same drive and ambition from his children. A tall, imposing man with prematurely silver hair, he commanded every room he entered. His business acumen was legendary in local circles, as was his temper when crossed. Dad believed in hierarchy, tradition, and above all, the Mitchell family reputation. My mother, Kathleen, once an art teacher with dreams of opening her own gallery, had long since surrendered her aspirations to support my father's. She managed our home with meticulous care and hosted flawless dinner parties for Dad's business associates. Her soft voice rarely rose above a gentle suggestion, especially when Dad made pronouncements about our futures. Years of subtle undermining had worn away her confidence, leaving her a shadow of the vibrant woman in their wedding photos. Charming and pragmatic, he adapted perfectly to Dad's expectations. He played the right sports, joined the right clubs, dated the right girls from the right families. By the time he graduated from Dartmouth with his business degree, Dad's alma mater, of course, his path was set in stone. He would learn at our father's side until he was deemed ready to take the reins. Then there was Megan, my younger sister by 2 years. Pretty, pleasant, and perpetually agreeable, she was the family darling. Her cheerleading trophies and social committee awards lined the mantel, while her mediocre grades were dismissed with affectionate chuckles about her being a people person. Megan knew exactly how to navigate Dad's moods and expectations, giving just enough academically to satisfy while excelling in the social arenas he valued for his daughters. I, however, was the middle child who never quite fit the Mitchell mold. From an early age, I buried myself in books rather than social events. Science fascinated me, especially human biology and medicine. While Megan hosted sleepovers, I conducted experiments in my bedroom. When Jason networked at Dad's company functions, I volunteered at the local hospital's pediatric ward. My academic achievements brought tense praise from my father. He appreciated excellence, but was unsettled by my independent interests. Report cards with straight A's received brisk nods, but mentions of science fairs or medical programs triggered concerned glances between my parents. Medicine is a worthy field, Dad would say carefully. But the business world offers more control over your future, Samantha. Doctors work brutal hours for increasingly diminishing returns. The only person who truly encouraged my passion was my grandmother Grace, my mother's mother. A retired nurse with an adventurous spirit that age hadn't diminished. Grandma Grace lived an hour away but remained my lifeline. During weekend visits to her cozy apartment, she'd share stories of her nursing days, slipping me medical textbooks and journals. "You have a healer's hands and a scientist's mind, Sammy," she'd tell me, using the nickname no one else was allowed to use. "The world needs people like you who see beyond surface problems to the root causes." Those visits sustained me through high school, where I excelled academically while navigating the complicated social dynamics of being a Mitchell. Our family name carried weight in the community. It opened doors, but also created expectations. I was supposed to be as polished and socially adept as the rest of my family, not the serious girl who preferred anatomy textbooks to fashion magazines. By senior year, the tension in our home grew palpable as college decision time approached. Dad had made it clear he expected me to attend his alma mater and major in business or perhaps economics. I applied there to appease him, but also to 7 medical track programs at prestigious universities across the country. When my acceptance letters arrived, the scholarship was my ticket to independence, a way to pursue my dreams without financial obligation to my father. Graduation day changed everything. As valedictorian, I stood at the podium looking out at the sea of faces. My family sat in the front row, Dad proud but distracted, checking emails on his phone, Mom teary and attentive, Jason politely interested, Megan texting beneath her program. Grandma Grace sat slightly apart from them, her eyes never leaving my face, her smile encouraging me toward the moment of truth. As I stand at the threshold of my future, I concluded my speech. I'm grateful to announce that I'll be attending Johns Hopkins University this fall on a full academic scholarship, pursuing my lifelong passion for medicine. The audience erupted in applause, but in the front row, my father's face froze in a mask of confusion rapidly transitioning to anger. That evening, while celebrations carried on around us, he cornered me in his study. "You made this decision without consulting me," he said, voice dangerously quiet. "You announced it publicly to prevent me from changing it." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "I'm following my own path, Dad. I thought you'd be proud of the scholarship." Pride isn't the issue. Family loyalty is. Mitchells stick to the plan, Samantha. Mitchells honor their father's guidance. That night marked the first major fracture in our family dynamic, a fissure that would eventually break open completely, swallowing the life I had known and forcing me to build another from scratch. College life at Johns Hopkins offered my first taste of true freedom. My dormitory became a sanctuary where achievements were measured by my standards alone. My roommate Dana, a biochemistry major from Seattle, became my first friend outside my father's sphere of influence. Together we navigated the rigorous demands of our pre-med courses, supporting each other through late-night study sessions and early morning labs. During freshman year, I called home weekly as expected. These conversations followed a predictable pattern. Mom asked about my classes and whether I was eating properly. Dad inquired about grades and whether I'd reconsidered transferring to Dartmouth. I maintained a delicate balance, sharing enough to satisfy them while establishing boundaries around my new life. By sophomore year, these calls grew less frequent. Dad's disappointment manifested as disinterest, and Mom seemed increasingly anxious during our conversations. Jason occasionally texted to check in, and Megan sent sporadic social media updates. Only Grandma Grace remained a constant, sending care packages with handwritten notes of encouragement. It was at the start of sophomore year that I met Travis Collins in my organic chemistry lab. Tall with unruly dark hair and intense blue eyes, he approached science with a practical focus that complemented my theoretical mindset. Unlike the polished boys from my hometown, Travis came from a working-class family in rural Pennsylvania. His father worked in construction while his mother managed a small diner. Travis had earned partial scholarships and worked 20 hours weekly to cover remaining expenses. "Medicine isn't abstract for me," he explained during our first study session. "My little brother almost died from appendicitis because my parents couldn't afford health insurance. The doctor who treated him anyway, who fought for his care, that's who I want to be." His authenticity and determination drew me in. By Thanksgiving, we were inseparable, partners in lab and in life. When holiday break approached, I invited him home, naively believing my family would see in him what I did: intelligence, ambition, and genuine kindness. The disaster began the moment we pulled into the driveway in Travis's aging Honda. Dad's disapproving glance at the car set the tone, while Mom's overly bright welcome signaled her nervousness. Throughout dinner, Travis endured subtle interrogation about his background, his parents' occupations, and his scholarship situation. He answered with grace, either missing or choosing to ignore the undertones of judgment. Later that night, I overheard my parents arguing in their bedroom. "He's clearly after her family connections," Dad insisted. "Boys like that see girls like Samantha as meal tickets." He seems respectful and hardworking, Mom offered timidly. Hardworking? His father hangs drywall for a living, Kathleen. I guided Travis through the remainder of the visit, making excuses to leave the house as much as possible. When we returned to campus, our relationship deepened in the aftermath of that disastrous visit. We created our own traditions, spent holidays with his warm, welcoming family, and built dreams of a future practicing medicine together. Then, just after midterms during spring semester, I missed my period. 2 home pregnancy tests confirmed what my body had already begun telling me. At 20 years old, with medical school years away, I was pregnant. Travis and I sat on his narrow dorm bed, staring at the test results. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you," he said, taking my hand. "We can make it work, Sam." My parents started with less. I spent a week researching options, calculating scenarios, and soul-searching. Despite the obstacles, I couldn't envision ending the pregnancy. Something in me, perhaps the healer I aspired to become, had already connected with the tiny life growing inside me. Spring break approached, and with it, the inevitable confrontation with my family. Travis offered to come with me, but I knew this was something I needed to face alone. The Mitchell home was quiet when I arrived, unusually so for a family gathering. Dad worked in his study while Mom prepared dinner. Jason was visiting with his new girlfriend from an appropriate family, and Megan was out with friends. I helped Mom in the kitchen, searching for the right moment to share my news. That moment never arrived naturally, so I created it. After dinner, as we gathered in the living room, I took a deep breath and spoke the words that would forever alter my place in the family. "I need to tell you all something important," I began, voice steadier than I felt. "I'm pregnant. Travis and I are keeping the baby. I've worked out a plan to continue my education part-time after the birth." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes immediately filling with tears. Dad's face drained of color before flushing deep red. Jason studied the carpet, while Megan's eyes widened in a mixture of shock and perverse fascination. "Is this some kind of joke?" Dad finally asked, his voice deadly quiet. "No, Dad. I'm about 8 weeks along." He stood abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. "This is what comes of your rebellion. First rejecting the family educational tradition, now this disgrace." "I don't see it as a disgrace," I countered, heart pounding. "It's unexpected, yes. But Travis and I—" "Travis," he spat the name. "That boy has ruined your future. Your medical aspirations are over, Samantha." "No, they're not. Many women complete medical training while raising children. It will take longer, but—" "Not as my daughter," he interrupted. "I won't fund this mistake or watch you throw away your potential on some working-class boy's child." Mom finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "Brian, please. She's our daughter." "She made her choice," he replied coldly. "Now she faces a choice. Terminate this pregnancy, return to school properly, and we'll discuss your future. Or keep it and you're on your own." Completely. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity the conditional nature of my father's love, available only when I complied with his vision for my life. "That's not a real choice," I said finally. "It's the only one you're getting," he replied. I looked to my mother, hoping for intervention, but she stared at her hands, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. Jason met my eyes briefly, a flash of sympathy quickly suppressed. Only Megan seemed unmoved, scrolling through her phone as if bored by the family drama. "Then I guess I'm on my own," I said, rising from my seat. What followed remains a blur in my memory. Harsh words exchanged, accusations hurled, personal belongings hastily packed. My father's final pronouncement came as I stood at the front door, suitcase in hand. "If you walk out that door, you are no longer a Mitchell. No support, no contact, no acknowledgement. Do you understand?" I looked back at my family one last time. Dad rigid with anger, Mom collapsed in silent sobs, Jason conflicted, Megan suddenly attentive now that the drama had peaked. "I understand perfectly," I replied, and stepped into the night, the door slamming behind me with finality. Travis's face registered shock when I appeared at his dormitory with my hastily packed suitcase, eyes swollen from crying, and explained my family's rejection. His tiny single room, barely large enough for one student, became our first shared home. We pushed his twin bed against the wall to make space for my books and clothes, creating a makeshift existence against housing regulations. "We'll figure it out," he promised, his arms around me as we lay squeezed together on his narrow bed that first night. My parents didn't exactly plan for me either, and they made it work. His optimism buoyed me through those first disorienting weeks. We crafted plans on notebook paper, calculating budgets and schedules that seemed plausible in theory. Travis would take a semester off to work full-time while I continued classes until the baby came. His parents offered cautious support from a distance, promising a portable crib and baby clothes still stored in their attic. Reality proved harsher than our calculations. By the end of the month, the dormitory administration discovered our living arrangement and issued an ultimatum: comply with single occupancy rules or face disciplinary action. With no family to turn to and limited funds, we found ourselves apartment hunting on a desperate timeline. The place we could afford was a studio apartment in a rundown building 30 minutes from campus by bus. The previous tenant had left behind the lingering scent of cigarettes that no amount of cleaning could eliminate. The kitchenette consisted of a mini refrigerator, 2-burner stove, and a sink with temperamental plumbing. But it had a separate bathroom and just enough space for a futon, desk, and the baby supplies we'd begun to accumulate. Travis found work as an overnight security guard at a local hospital and picked up weekend shifts at a convenience store. His course load dropped from 18 credits to 6, the minimum to maintain student status. I continued full-time studies, racing between morning classes and afternoon appointments, studying during bus rides and doctors' waiting rooms. But the process was lengthy and complex. When my pregnancy became visible, I noticed subtle changes in how professors and classmates treated me. Some offered compassion and accommodation. Others displayed judgment through stiff interactions and lowered expectations. My carefully constructed academic identity now came with an asterisk: the pregnant girl. The one with potential, now compromised. Grandma Grace was my lifeline during this period. Though limited by my father's influence over the family, she managed to send small care packages and occasional checks for prenatal vitamins slipped into cards. Her arthritis made travel difficult, but we spoke weekly by phone, her unwavering belief in me sustaining my fragile confidence. "You come from stronger stock than your father knows," she would remind me. "My mother raised 6 children during the Depression after your great-grandfather was killed in a factory accident. Mitchell women persevere." As my due date approached, the reality of impending parenthood intensified our struggles. Travis worked double shifts whenever possible, returning to our apartment gray-faced with exhaustion. I waddled between classes with an aching back, fighting to maintain my GPA as focus became increasingly difficult. Our relationship, once characterized by intellectual connection and shared dreams, narrowed to logistical discussions about money, schedules, and survival. Lily Grace Mitchell Collins arrived 2 weeks early, during finals week of spring semester. My water broke during a biochemistry exam, resulting in a dramatic exit that became minor campus legend. Travis made it to the hospital just in time for her birth. Still wearing his security guard uniform, eyes wild with panic and joy. The moment they placed her in my arms, tiny, red-faced, with a shock of dark hair, transformed everything. Looking into her perfect face, I understood viscerally that every sacrifice had been worthwhile. Travis and I cried together over her, momentarily united in wonder at what we'd created. The hospital social worker connected us with emergency assistance programs that provided essential baby supplies and temporary food benefits. Travis's mother Deborah arrived the following day, staying a week to help us adjust. Her practical support, teaching me to bathe the baby, establishing feeding schedules, preparing freezer meals, proved invaluable. Though her constant worried expression betrayed her concern about our situation. "You're both so young," she said gently as she prepared to leave. Frank, and I can take Lily for a while if you need to focus on school. Just until you get on your feet. Though offered with kindness, the suggestion stung. Thank you, but we'll manage, I replied. Perhaps more firmly than necessary. Lily stays with us. The following months became a blur of sleepless nights and relentless days. I took a semester off, using the time to secure a position as an evening receptionist at the university hospital. The role paid modestly but offered critical flexibility and potential networking opportunities in the medical field. Travis continued his security job but dropped to part-time student status indefinitely. Our apartment transformed with Lily's arrival. The desk disappeared to make room for a crib. Textbooks shared space with diaper packages. The kitchenette counter became a bottle-drying station. We slept in shifts, Travis during day hours before his overnight work. Me catching fragments of rest between Lily's feedings and my evening job. The strain began showing in our relationship by Lily's first birthday. Travis, once passionate about medicine, spoke less frequently about returning to full-time studies. His expression when watching me study late at night shifted from supportive to resentful. Minor disagreements escalated into arguments about money, responsibility, and sacrificed dreams. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who actually adjusted my expectations, he said during one particularly bitter exchange. You're still chasing the same dream while I'm working security and stocking shelves. That wasn't the plan, I reminded him. You were supposed to go back full-time once I graduated. We agreed. Plans change when you have a kid at 20, he shot back. One of us needs to be realistic. When Lily turned 2, the fractures in our relationship cracked open completely. Travis started spending his off days with friends rather than at home. He questioned expenses related to my education while developing sudden interest in upgrading his aging car. The emotional distance between us expanded until we functioned more as roommates than partners, communicating primarily about Lily's schedule and household logistics. The morning I found the apartment half empty remains etched in my memory. Travis had waited until I left for an early lab session, packing his clothes and personal items while our neighbor watched Lily. His note explained that he'd moved in with a coworker, would continue supporting Lily financially, and needed space to figure out his own future. He'd left his key on the counter alongside $300 cash, his portion of that month's rent. That night, after putting Lily to bed in our now echoing apartment, I experienced my lowest moment. Sitting on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m., I allowed myself 30 minutes of complete breakdown, sobbing into a towel to avoid waking my daughter, cataloging the spectacular ruins of my life at 23. Single mother. Half-completed degree. Multiple jobs. Alienated from family. Abandoned by partner. When my self-allocated grieving time ended, I washed my face, opened my organic chemistry textbook, and resumed studying. The path forward had narrowed, but it still existed, one step at a time, one day at a time, with Lily as my compass. The fluorescent lights of the hospital cafeteria buzzed overhead as I gulped lukewarm coffee during my 15-minute break from the reception desk. 3 months had passed since Travis's departure, and our new routine had solidified: daycare drop-offs at 7 a.m., classes until 2 p.m., library study until my 4 p.m. shift, work until midnight, then home to relieve the babysitter. Sleep came in precious 4-hour blocks before starting again. I was reviewing flashcards when someone set a tray across from me. Mind if I join you? All other tables are taken. I looked up to see Dr. Amanda Parker, an attending physician I recognized from the pediatric oncology department. In her early 40s with prematurely silver-streaked dark hair, she had a reputation for brilliant diagnoses and intimidating standards. Of course, I mumbled, gathering my scattered notes to make space. Rather than focusing on her meal, Dr. Parker glanced at my flashcards. Pharmacology. Yes. Exam tomorrow morning. You're in the pre-med program? I thought you were administration staff. Reception, I clarified. I work evenings and take classes during the day. Something in her expression shifted, clinical assessment replacing casual interest. That's an ambitious schedule. Necessary, I replied simply. Our conversation might have ended there, but Lily's school photo slipped from my textbook. Dr. Parker picked it up before I could retrieve it. "Your daughter?" she asked, studying the image of Lily's gap-toothed smile. "Yes. She's 3. The doctor's eyes moved between the photo and my face, calculating. "So you're working reception, attending pre-med full-time, and raising a child alone?" The directness of her question startled me into honesty. "Yes. Her father left last year. We make it work." "What year are you?" "I should be graduating, but I've had to extend another 3 semesters if everything goes according to plan." Dr. Parker returned Lily's photo, her expression unreadable. "You must really want this." "It's not about wanting," I said, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. "It's about becoming who I'm supposed to be." That 15-minute conversation altered the trajectory of my life. The following week, Dr. Parker approached me at the reception desk with a proposition: transfer to a research assistant position in her department. The role offered better pay, daytime hours compatible with my class schedule, and most importantly, exposure to clinical practice. "You'll be taking notes during rounds, organizing research data, and occasionally observing procedures," she explained. "It's not glamorous, but it's relevant experience for medical school applications. And the schedule would be more manageable for a single parent." I stuttered my gratitude, overwhelmed by this unexpected opportunity. "Don't thank me yet," she replied briskly. "I expect excellence. If you can manage your current impossible schedule, you clearly have capacity. I'm simply redirecting it more efficiently." Dr. Parker became more than a supervisor. She emerged as the mentor I desperately needed. Under her guidance, I navigated the complex process of applying to medical schools with non-traditional circumstances. She reviewed my personal statements, conducted mock interviews, and wrote a recommendation letter that addressed my unconventional path with unflinching honesty. "Your circumstances aren't excuses," she advised during one of our discussions. "They're evidence of your determination and resilience. Frame them accordingly." Around this same time, an unexpected letter arrived from Grandma Grace. Inside the envelope was a bank check for $25,000 and a brief note: "My emergency fund. No emergencies left at my age. Your education is the best investment I could make. Tell no one. All my love." The timing of her gift seemed miraculous, enabling me to reduce my work hours during the critical MCET preparation period and providing a safety net for Lily's needs. I called her immediately, crying with gratitude. "I've been saving since you were born," she explained. "I always knew you'd forge your own path, Sammy. I just didn't anticipate all the obstacles." When I asked about my parents' reaction to her helping me, her laugh carried a rare edge. "Your father doesn't monitor my accounts, dear. What's left of my money is mine to spend. Besides, Brian has always underestimated women. It's his greatest weakness." This financial breathing room coincided with another unexpected alliance. Jessica Lynn, a nurse from the pediatric oncology unit, lived in my apartment building and had a daughter slightly older than Lily. After several playground conversations, she proposed a childcare arrangement. I would watch both girls during her weekend shifts if she took them during my evening classes. "Single mom solidarity," she explained with a tired smile. "We have to create our own systems." Our arrangement expanded beyond childcare into genuine friendship. Jessica's practical wisdom about raising children while pursuing a demanding career became another form of mentorship. Her daughter Maya and Lily developed a sister-like bond, sharing clothes, toys, and eventually a bunk bed when Jessica and I decided to split a 2-bedroom apartment to further reduce expenses. The support system expanding around me created space to breathe and eventually to excel. My MCT scores exceeded expectations. My applications to medical schools, crafted with Dr. Parker's guidance, generated interview invitations despite my non-traditional status. For the first time since being disowned, I felt visible for my potential rather than my circumstances. 6 months after Travis left, I received a text message from an unknown number. "Can we meet?" "It's Jason." My brother suggested a coffee shop near the hospital, far from our parents' social circles. When I arrived with Lily, his expression registered shock, whether at seeing his niece for the first time or at how much I had changed, I couldn't tell. "You look," he began. "Tired," I suggested. "Professional," he corrected. "You carry yourself differently now." After initial awkwardness, Jason explained his situation. He had recently been named junior partner in our father's firm, but found the achievement hollow. His engagement to Caroline, the appropriate daughter of Dad's golf partner, had ended when he realized he was conforming to expectations rather than pursuing genuine happiness. "Watching you build a life completely on your own terms made me question everything," he admitted. "Even if your terms weren't what you would have chosen." He showed genuine interest in Lily, who warmed to him immediately. Before we parted, he slipped me his business card with his personal number. "Mom asks about you," he said quietly. "Dad forbids your name, but she finds ways to inquire. Megan's away at college now, party central from her Instagram. And Grandma Grace." His hesitation alarmed me. "What about Grandma?" "She's not well. Heart problems. She refuses to move in with Mom and Dad despite their insistence." "Does she need help?" I could. "She wants to see you and Lily," he interrupted. "Soon." That's actually why I reached out. As we said goodbye, Jason hugged me, something he hadn't done since we were children. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for not standing up for you. For taking 3 years to contact you." "You're here now," I replied, surprising myself with the forgiveness in my voice. That's what matters. With each unexpected ally, Dr. Parker's mentorship, Grandma Grace's financial support, Jessica's practical partnership, and now Jason's tentative return, the wounds of my family's rejection began to heal. Not completely, and certainly not without scars, but enough to recognize that family could be chosen, created, and redefined through love rather than obligation. Dr. Mitchell to pediatric oncology. Dr. Mitchell to pediatric oncology. Even after completing my residency, the hospital intercom announcement of my name sent a small thrill through me. Dr. Samantha Mitchell, the title representing years of relentless work, countless sacrifices, and the fulfillment of a dream that had once seemed impossible. I hurried through the hospital corridors, white coat flapping behind me, responding to the page. A new patient had arrived, 7-year-old with symptoms suggesting leukemia, and my attending physician wanted my assessment before proceeding with the diagnostic protocol I'd helped develop during my fellowship. At 32, I had established myself as a promising specialist in pediatric oncology at Boston Children's Hospital. My research on early intervention protocols had gained attention in medical journals, and I'd recently been invited to present at a prestigious conference in Chicago. The professional trajectory that had once been derailed by pregnancy and family rejection was back on course, altered but ultimately strengthened by the challenges I'd overcome. Lily, now 9, had grown into a remarkably resilient and compassionate 4th grader. Her dark hair and blue eyes reflected her father's genetics, but her determined personality and analytical mind were recognizably mine. Travis maintained sporadic contact, sending birthday and Christmas gifts, occasionally taking her for weekend visits when his work schedule as a pharmaceutical sales representative allowed. Our relationship had evolved from bitterness to a functional co-parenting arrangement focused entirely on Lily's well-being. Our life together had stabilized into comfortable routines. The tiny apartment of Lily's early years had been replaced by a modest but charming 2-bedroom condo in a family-friendly neighborhood with good schools. My fellowship stipend, followed by my attending physician salary, had gradually eased the financial pressure that had defined our existence for so long. For the first time, we had breathing room, both literal and figurative. After finishing with my new patient, I checked my phone to find a text from Lily's after-school program confirming she'd been picked up by Uncle Jason. My brother had become a regular presence in our lives over the past 5 years, often helping with childcare when my hospital schedule required flexibility. His monthly visits had gradually increased in frequency until he accepted a position with a Boston investment firm, moving just 20 minutes from our home. Jason's relationship with our parents had grown increasingly strained as his connection to Lily and me strengthened. each time he mentioned us to our father. The resulting arguments widened the rift. Mom remained caught in the middle, secretly asking about us through Jason while publicly maintaining Dad's position that I had made my choice. I completed my charts and headed home, looking forward to dinner with Jason and Lily. As I drove, my thoughts drifted to Grandma Grace. The heart condition Jason had mentioned during our reunion had eventually claimed her life 2 years ago. Her funeral marked one of the most painful experiences of my adult life, watching from a distance as my family gathered, unable to approach without creating a scene that would dishonor her memory. Jason had stood with me at a separate graveside service the following day, Lily placing wildflowers on the fresh earth. Grandma Grace's lawyer had contacted me afterward, explaining that she had left me a modest inheritance, enough to make the down payment on our condo and establish a college fund for Lily. Her final gift had been financial security, the foundation upon which I could build our future. Arriving home, I found Jason and Lily at the kitchen table surrounded by science project materials. My daughter's face lit up when I entered. "Mom, Uncle Jason is helping me build a solar system model. Did you know he actually remembers all the planets' names?" "Impressive," I replied, winking at my brother. "Though I believe they taught those in elementary school." Jason rolled his eyes good-naturedly. At 36, he had shed the polished corporate appearance our father preferred for a more relaxed style. His decision to leave the family business had allowed him to develop his own investment philosophy focused on sustainable companies, a direction Dad considered foolishly idealistic. After Lily went to bed, Jason and I sat on the small balcony overlooking the neighborhood playground, sharing a bottle of wine as we often did during his visits. "I had lunch with Mom yesterday," he said after a comfortable silence. "She asked about you. Actually used your name this time, which is progress." I sipped my wine, absorbing this information. "And Dad?" "Still Dad. Stubborn as ever." Jason hesitated. "His 60th birthday is next month. They're having a family gathering at the house." "I'm aware," I replied carefully. Our mother's Christmas card, sent to Jason, but obviously intended for me as well, had mentioned the milestone celebration. "You should come," Jason said abruptly. "Both of you. It's time." The suggestion sent my heart racing. After 9 years of silence? I don't think showing up at his birthday party is the right moment for reconciliation. Maybe not reconciliation, Jason conceded. But closure, perhaps. For yourself, if nothing else. I considered his words, examining my own emotions. The acute pain of rejection had gradually transformed over the years. First into defensive anger, then into a kind of numb acceptance. The intensive therapy I'd pursued during residency had helped me process the family trauma and recognize the patterns I didn't want to repeat with Lily. What would it accomplish? I asked finally. Jason leaned forward, suddenly earnest. "You've built this amazing life, Sam. You're a respected physician saving children's lives. You've raised an incredible daughter without support. You did everything Dad said you couldn't do when he threw you out. I didn't do it to prove him wrong. I know that. But don't you think there's power in showing them who you've become? Not asking for approval or forgiveness, just standing in your truth." His phrasing made me smile. "Your truth? Those therapy sessions I recommended are really rubbing off on you." Deflection noted. "Dr. Mitchell," he replied with a smirk. "Just promise you'll think about it." Later that night, unable to sleep, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my laptop. Images of Lily's childhood documented our journey, her first steps in our tiny apartment, preschool graduation with Jessica and Maya cheering, Dr. Parker holding her during a hospital fundraiser. The visual narrative of our life reminded me how far we'd come and the chosen family we'd created along the way. The final folder contained the few photos I had from before family vacations, holiday gatherings, my high school graduation. Strangers might see a perfect family in these images, unaware of the conditional acceptance that underlay every smile. I lingered on the last photo taken before everything fractured, my parents, Jason, Megan, and me at a charity gala. I had just completed freshman year, still firmly within the fold of family approval. For years, I had defined myself in opposition to my parents, particularly my father. His rejection had initially shattered me, but ultimately forced me to build an identity based on my own values rather than his expectations. The woman and physician I had become emerged from that painful breaking and subsequent reconstruction. Perhaps Jason was right. Perhaps it was time to close the circle, not seeking reconciliation necessarily, but acknowledging that I no longer needed either their approval or their disapproval to know my own worth. The following morning, I called my brother. About Dad's birthday, I began. Lily and I will come. Not to make amends or create a scene, just to show them who we are now. Yours is pretty damn impressive, Jason replied, the smile evident in his voice. We'll see if Dad agrees, I said, surprised to realize I no longer particularly cared if he did. The invitation to my father's 60th birthday celebration arrived addressed to Jason, as expected. An elegant cream-colored card with embossed lettering announced a milestone celebration honoring Brian Mitchell at my parents' home. The formal language and specified cocktail attire confirmed that little had changed in the Mitchell approach to social occasions. As the date approached, my initial determination wavered. Doubts crept in during quiet moments, while reviewing patient charts, driving Lily to school, or lying awake at night. Was I reopening healed wounds? Creating unnecessary drama? Subjecting Lily to potential rejection? I discussed the decision extensively with my therapist, Dr. Winters, who had guided me through processing my family trauma over the years. What outcome are you hoping for? She asked during our session. I'm not expecting a Hollywood reconciliation, I replied. Maybe just recognition. Acknowledgement that I exist. That Lily exists. That the choice I made was valid, even if it wasn't what they wanted for me. And if you don't receive that acknowledgement? The question gave me pause. Then at least I'll know I tried. I can move forward without wondering what if. Preparing Lily for the visit required careful conversations about family dynamics and the possibility of complicated reactions. At 9, she possessed emotional intelligence beyond her years, a quality developed by growing up amidst adult challenges. Your grandparents might be surprised to see us, I explained as we shopped for appropriate outfits. They might need time to adjust. Because they were mean to you when I was in your tummy, she asked with characteristic directness. They made choices based on what they thought was right at the time, I replied, choosing my words carefully. Just like I did. Sometimes when people make different choices, it creates distance. But Uncle Jason still loves you, and he loves them too, she reasoned. Yes, families are complicated. Is Grandpa Brian going to be mad we're coming to his party? I knelt to her level in the department store aisle. He might be surprised, maybe uncomfortable. But his reaction isn't about you, Lily. You are an amazing, brilliant, kind person who deserves to know her family. Whatever happens, we have each other, Uncle Jason, Aunt Jessica, and Maya, and all our chosen family who love us exactly as we are. The day of the party arrived with perfect early autumn weather. I dressed in a navy blue sheath dress that projected professional confidence, armor of sorts. Lily wore a burgundy velvet dress with black patent leather shoes, her dark hair pulled back with matching velvet headband. As I fastened a silver locket around her neck, a gift from Grandma Grace on her 5th birthday, she studied our reflection in the mirror. We look fancy, she observed. Yes, we do. Ready for an adventure? She nodded solemnly. Ready. Jason picked us up in his Tesla, another departure from Dad's preference for American luxury cars. During the drive to suburban Boston, we maintained light conversation, carefully avoiding the tension building with each mile. As we turned onto the familiar tree-lined street, my chest tightened with memories. The Mitchell family home stood unchanged, imposing colonial with perfect landscaping and discreet luxury. Cars lined the circular driveway, Lexus, Mercedes, BMW, the expected vehicles of my parents' social circle. Jason parked behind a Range Rover, turning to face me before we exited. Last chance to back out, he said gently. I glanced at Lily in the back seat, her expression curious but calm. No, we're doing this. Together. We approached the front entrance, the same door that had closed behind me 9 years earlier when I left pregnant and disowned. Classical music and conversation drifted from within. Jason rang the bell, squeezing my hand reassuringly as we waited. The door opened to reveal my mother, elegant as always in a tailored gray dress. Her blonde hair now streaked with silver but still styled in the same conservative bob. Her practiced hostess smile froze when she registered my presence. "Jason, you're late." "Everyone is all ready," her voice faltered, eyes widening as she processed the sight before her. "Samantha." "Hello, Mom," I said quietly. Her gaze shifted to Lily, who stood slightly behind me, holding my hand. The color drained from her face. "Is that?" "This is Lily," I confirmed. "Your granddaughter." For a moment, I thought she might close the door or call for my father. Instead, tears filled her eyes as she stepped back wordlessly, creating space for us to enter. The foyer opened to the living room where approximately 30 guests mingled with cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. My father stood near the fireplace in animated conversation with business associates, his silver hair and commanding presence unchanged by time. Megan, now 27 and fashionably dressed, held court with friends on the opposite side of the room. Our entrance created a ripple effect of notice and whispers. Conversations paused mid-sentence as recognition spread. Megan spotted us first, her champagne glass freezing halfway to her lips. The shock on her face quickly transformed into something unreadable as she excused herself from her group and approached. "Samantha?" "Oh my God," she said, her voice carrying enough to draw additional attention. "Is this really happening?" Before I could respond, she surprised me by pulling me into a hug, stiff and awkward, but seemingly genuine. When she pulled back, her gaze fell to Lily. "And this must be my niece," she said, kneeling despite her designer dress. "I'm your Aunt Megan. You're much prettier than your baby pictures." "You've seen my baby pictures?" Lily asked, confusion evident. Megan glanced up at me. "Jason shows me photos sometimes, when Dad's not around." This admission of secret family connections struck me deeply. While I'd been erased from the family narrative, whispered acknowledgments of my existence had continued behind closed doors. My father remained unaware of our arrival, still engaged in his conversation. Mom hovered nearby, visibly distressed, but making no move to alert him. The moment stretched uncomfortably until Jason placed his hand on my back. "Let's get this over with," he murmured, guiding us toward the fireplace. The progression across the living room felt surreal, like walking through molasses while familiar faces from my past registered shock, curiosity, and occasionally compassion. By the time we reached my father, a hush had fallen over the gathering. He turned, irritation at the interruption visible, until he registered who stood before him. Brian Mitchell, patriarch and architect of the family that had rejected me, stared as though seeing a ghost. 9 years had added lines to his face and slightly stooped his once perfect posture. But his eyes remained sharp and assessing as they moved from me to Lily and back. "What is the meaning of this?" he asked, voice low but carrying in the sudden silence. "Hello, Dad," I said calmly. "I thought it was time you met your granddaughter." "This is Lily." The silence that enveloped the room felt tangible. A physical presence suspended between my father and me as his guests watched with thinly veiled fascination. For 9 years, I had existed as an unmentionable secret in this house, the daughter who defied expectations and paid the ultimate price. Now I stood before them as living proof that rejection hadn't resulted in the failure my father predicted. Dad's complexion shifted from shocked white to angry red as he struggled to maintain his composure in front of his carefully curated audience. His eyes darted around the room, assessing the social damage of this unexpected development. "This is hardly the appropriate time or place for this reunion," he said finally, voice tight with controlled fury. "I agree," I replied evenly. 9 years late, in fact. "But it's the invitation we received." Mom stepped forward, social instincts overriding the tension. "Perhaps we should continue the celebration. Brian, why don't you show Samantha and Lily to your study? The rest of us will carry on with dinner preparations." The practiced smile she offered guests didn't reach her eyes. which held a plea as they met mine. I gave a slight nod, understanding her desperate attempt to contain the situation. As guests reluctantly resumed conversations with renewed vigor, now supplied with premium gossip material, Dad turned without a word and strode toward his study. Mom hesitated, then squeezed my hand briefly before returning to her hostess duties. Jason placed his hand supportively on my shoulder. Want me to come with you? No, I replied quietly. This needs to happen between us. Could you stay with Lily? My daughter, observing the adults with perceptive eyes, spoke up. I want to go with you, Mom. I knelt to her level, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I need to have a grown-up talk with your grandfather first. Uncle Jason will introduce you to some family, and I'll come find you soon. Okay. She nodded reluctantly. Is Grandpa Brian mad? He's surprised, I answered carefully. Sometimes adults need time to process surprise. As I straightened, Megan approached hesitantly. I could show Lily the dessert table. There's chocolate fountain. The olive branch, however small, touched me unexpectedly. Thank you. That would be nice. I watched Lily walk away with her aunt and uncle before following my father's path to the study, the same room where he had delivered ultimatums and judgment throughout my childhood. The heavy wooden door stood partially open, and I paused before entering, gathering strength for the confrontation ahead. Dad stood at the window overlooking the back garden, hands clasped behind him, shoulders rigid. He didn't turn when I entered, but spoke to my reflection in the glass. You deliberately chose to create a scene at my birthday celebration. That wasn't my intention, I replied, closing the door behind me. Jason thought it was time to end the silence. I agreed. He turned then, his expression hardening as he examined me properly for the first time. You look different. 9 years will do that. Dr. Mitchell, I presume? Jason mentioned you completed your medical training despite the complications. The clinical detachment in his voice, referring to my daughter as a complication, ignited a familiar anger I thought I'd moved beyond. I took a measured breath before responding. Yes. I specialize in pediatric oncology at Boston Children's Hospital. My research protocol for early-stage leukemia treatment was published in the New England Journal of Medicine last year. A flicker of something, perhaps pride quickly suppressed, crossed his features before the mask of disappointment returned. And the father? That boy from college. Travis and I co-parent. He's a pharmaceutical sales representative now. Dad scoffed. Of course he is. Selling rather than healing, more lucrative, less challenging. Not everyone measures success by income bracket. I countered. Travis contributes to Lily's well-being in his own way. My father moved to his desk, touching its polished surface like a talisman of authority. Why are you here, Samantha? After 9 years, why now? Financial difficulties? Need connections for your career advancement. The accusation stung, but no longer held power to devastate me. I'm here because a child deserves to know her family, regardless of ancient history. I'm here because carrying anger serves no one. Mostly, I'm here because I don't need to hide from you anymore. Hide? He raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware you were hiding. Not physically. But I spent years defining myself by your rejection, proving you wrong. Exceeding expectations specifically because you said I couldn't. It was exhausting. So this visit is about unburdening yourself? His tone remained dismissive. Seeking closure, as they say? Perhaps, I acknowledged. But also showing you the reality you chose to miss. You have a granddaughter who's brilliant, kind, and curious. She excels in science and mathematics. She volunteers reading to senior citizens every Saturday morning. She plays violin. These are things you would know if pride hadn't prevented you from being her grandfather. For the first time. Uncertainty flickered across his face. You made your choice clear when you walked out that door. I was 20 and pregnant, Dad. You gave me an impossible ultimatum. What choice did I actually have? The choice to listen to parents who wanted what was best for you. No, I corrected quietly. The choice to follow your predetermined plan for my life or be excommunicated from the family. Those weren't options, that was control. The door opened before he could respond, revealing my mother's hesitant figure. She had clearly been listening outside, her composed hostess facade now cracked to reveal the emotional turmoil beneath. "Brian," she said, her voice stronger than I remembered. "Enough." My father's expression registered shock at her interruption. "Kathleen, this isn't." 9 years, she interrupted, fully entering the room and closing the door behind her. 9 years we've lost with our daughter and granddaughter because of your ultimatum. I've supported your decision because that's what I've always done, but I will not continue this charade. The unexpected rebellion left my father momentarily speechless. Mom turned to me, tears brimming in her eyes. "Your daughter is extraordinary, Samantha. Megan just brought her to me. She's explaining molecular structure to one of the guests, a university professor who looks absolutely stunned." Despite the tension, I smiled. "She wants to be a research scientist, specifically in renewable energy development." "Of course she does," Mom said with a wet laugh. "She's your daughter." Dad cleared his throat, struggling to regain control of the conversation. "Kathleen, we agreed." "No, Brian. You decided." I complied. "There's a difference." She straightened her shoulders, looking suddenly years younger. "I've missed the first 9 years of my granddaughter's life. I will not miss any more." The silent standoff between my parents revealed decades of power dynamics shifting in real time. I watched my mother transform from the acquiescent partner I'd known to someone who had perhaps finally reached her limit. "You raised me to believe family standing and appearances mattered above all," I said, addressing my father directly. "But the past 9 years taught me what actually matters. I built a career saving children's lives. I created a home where my daughter feels unconditionally loved. I formed friendships and mentorships that sustained me when biology failed. You can remain angry about choices I made at 20, or you can know the woman and physician I've become at 29. Either way, I'll continue being exactly who I am." Something complicated passed across my father's face, pride wrestling with stubbornness, love contending with control. Before he could respond, a small knock sounded at the door, followed by Lily's voice. "Mom?" "Uncle Jason said to check if you're okay." The adults exchanged glances before Mom moved to open the door. Lily stood with Jason and Megan hovering protectively behind her. My daughter's perceptive gaze took in the room's tense atmosphere. "We're fine, sweetheart," I assured her. "Just having an important conversation." She nodded solemnly before her attention shifted to my father. Without hesitation or coaching, she stepped forward and extended her hand formally. "Hello. I'm Lily Grace Mitchell Collins. You must be my grandfather Brian. I've seen your picture in Uncle Jason's wallet." The simple, direct introduction from this poised child seemed to pierce my father's defenses in a way adult confrontation could not. He stared at her outstretched hand, then at her face, where he perhaps saw echoes of my childhood features alongside Travis's blue eyes. After a moment that stretched painfully, he accepted her small hand in his larger one. "Yes, I'm your grandfather." "I know," she replied matter-of-factly. "Mom says you're very good with numbers and business." "I'm good at math too. I got a perfect score on my standardized test last year." A reluctant smile tugged at Dad's mouth. "Did you now?" "Yes. Mom says I get my analytical mind from the Mitchell side of the family." The acknowledgement that I had kept his contributions alive in Lily's understanding of herself visibly affected him. His rigid posture softened slightly as he regarded this unexpected continuation of his legacy. "Your mother was always exceptionally bright," he conceded, glancing my way. "Top of her class at everything she attempted." "I know," Lily nodded. "She has awards and diplomas all over her office at the hospital. She saves kids with cancer." The simple pride in her statement hung in the air, impossible to diminish or dismiss. In my daughter's eyes, my value had never been in question, a stark contrast to the conditional approval I'd spent my childhood seeking from the man before us. Perhaps, my mother interjected gently, "we should rejoin the party. Dinner will be served soon." The suggestion broke the moment's spell, returning us to the practical reality of dozens of guests waiting beyond the study door. Dad straightened his tie, visibly regrouping. "Yes, that would be appropriate." He hesitated, then addressed me directly. You and Lily are welcome to stay, of course. The invitation, stilted and formal, represented neither full reconciliation nor continued rejection. It existed in the complicated middle ground where real family dynamics often reside, messy, unresolved, but with doors left cautiously open. Thank you, I replied simply. We'd like that. As we prepared to rejoin the celebration, Dad cleared his throat once more. Samantha, that is, we should discuss arrangements for future contact. The awkward olive branch touched me more deeply than I expected. Yes, we should. The remainder of the evening unfolded in a surreal blur of introductions and explanations. Guests absorbed the shock of my reappearance with varying degrees of tact. Some approached with genuine warmth, others maintained polite distance while cataloging the gossip value. Through it all, Lily navigated with natural grace, accepting compliments and answering questions about school with composed confidence. I watched my daughter charming my father's business associates, making my mother laugh with her observations, and teaching Megan a hand-clapping game from school. In her, I saw the bridge that might span 9 years of absence, not erasing the hurt, but offering a path forward. When it came time to leave, the goodbye lacked the finality of our previous parting. Mom hugged me tightly, whispering promises to call the following day. Megan exchanged contact information with surprising enthusiasm. Dad maintained his emotional distance, but extended his hand formally. You've done well, Samantha, he said quietly. Despite everything. Not despite, Dad, I corrected gently. Because of everything. The path shapes the traveler. In the car heading home, Lily fell asleep against Jason's shoulder in the back seat. I drove in contemplative silence, processing the evening's emotional complexity. You okay? Jason asked softly. I think so, I replied honestly. It wasn't the Hollywood reconciliation scene, but it was real. They saw you, he observed. Really saw you, maybe for the first time. And Lily, I added. They saw her too. The following weeks brought cautious steps toward reconnection. Mom called regularly, eager to establish a relationship with Lily. Dad maintained his distance, but sent a formal card acknowledging Lily's academic achievements, enclosing a check for her college fund that I returned with a polite note explaining she already had one. Megan surprised me most, showing genuine interest in being an aunt and spending time with us when her social calendar allowed. The sister who had been a distant figure in my childhood emerged as a more complex adult, still status-conscious, but capable of genuine connection beneath the polished exterior. 2 months after the birthday party, I invited my parents to Lily's winter violin recital. They attended, sitting stiffly in the auditorium, but applauding with evident pride when she performed. Afterward, Dad awkwardly commented on her musical ability, his version of approval. Perfect reconciliation remained elusive, perhaps impossible given our history. The wounds of rejection had formed scars that would always be part of our family story. But in acknowledging each other's existence, in creating space for Lily to know her biological family while maintaining the boundaries I needed, we found a workable peace. The true victory wasn't in changing my father or vindicating my choices in his eyes. It came in recognizing that I no longer needed either his approval or disapproval to define my worth. The disowned daughter had returned not as a supplicant seeking readmission to the family, but as a complete person offering them the privilege of knowing her and her child on her terms. Life continues to unfold in complicated patterns. Some family gatherings remain tense, others offer glimpses of genuine connection. Lily benefits from knowing her grandparents while understanding the complex history that separated us for 9 years. I maintain the boundaries necessary for my emotional health while allowing relationship where possible. The ultimate lesson wasn't about family obligation or dramatic reconciliation. It was about defining family on my own terms. The people who stood by me during my darkest moments, Dr. Parker, Jessica and Maya, Jason, and countless others who offered support without conditions, proved that family transcends biology. They taught me that chosen connections often provide the unconditional love that blood relationships sometimes fail to deliver. Had you ever had to redefine your understanding of family? Has rejection ever led you to discover unexpected strength? Share your experiences in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and redefinition. Remember that sometimes life's greatest detours lead to our truest destinations. Thank you for joining me on this deeply personal journey, and I wish you courage on your own path to authentic connection.